So let me tell you a little bit about myself. I've always been a pretty big fan of these Japanese cartoon shows. When I was younger, it started with the Pokemon and the Dragon Balls on Toonami. When I was in middle school and high school, I got a little more advanced. I developed a little bit of a more mature taste, if you know what I'm talking about. And then it's been crazy. As an adult, I've seen this big boom in anime. When I was younger, it was sort of weird if you liked anime, but now it's kind of the most mainstream thing in the world. Everyone likes it. All the rappers, they got the anime in their music videos. It's a really big thing now, and it's really cool to see. But anyways, I think a lot of people can relate to me if you've been watching anime for a long time, and that I go through phases where I'll watch a ton of shows, but then maybe for like a year or so, I'll only watch 2 or 3 series in a whole year. Kind of go through these phases, and I think most people do. But for me, in 2020 and the last year, I have been going through some binging, okay? There's just so many shows to catch up on, and I've been trying to catch up on all of them. And I always have a bunch of opinions about everything I watch, but I don't have... This is going to sound a little sad, and I'm sorry. I just don't have as many friends. Especially ones that watch anime. I know it sounds sad, it's not that sad. I just don't have as many friends that watch anime, and so I don't really have a lot of people to talk about it with. So I figured, what better way to get your opinions out than make a video about it and put it on the internet? So here I am. This is me talking about all the series that I've watched this month. In the future, I may go more in depth on individual series, but this is just going to be everything I watched this month. As a spoiler, I might be spoiling a little bit about all of these shows I'm going to talk about. It's going to be mostly spoiler free, but I'm going to talk about the premise and maybe spoil something you'd find out in the first or second episode. But just in case you want to avoid all spoilers, I will have timestamps in the description about all of the shows I'm going to talk about. Also, if you just came here for the show that I included in the title, you can skip to that in the description as well. So this is me talking about all of the anime I've seen this month. So this first one that I'm going to talk about might surprise some of you because it's literally the biggest thing on planet Earth, and that is Demon Slayer. That's right, you heard me right. I watched Demon Slayer for the first time about a month ago. It sounds blasphemous, but I'm really the type of guy to where if something's super big when it comes out, I want to wait until the hype has died down, so I'm not looking at it through rose tinted glasses or whatever they call it. I think that hype can kind of build something up to be bigger than it actually is. But let me be the first to tell you guys that even without all of the hype, this is definitely one of the best shows that I've ever seen, or at least best shonen shows that I've ever seen. At first, it sort of starts off as your typical shonen. The first episode does a good job of being unique and setting up Nezuko and Tanjiro's journey. But then for the first like 8 or 9 episodes, I feel like it was pretty typical. He meets the trainer, they do the rigorous training, and he eventually becomes better after thinking he couldn't even do it. Then he joins the Demon Slayer ranks, and it kind of sets it up to where he's going to be climbing the ranks. It's basically like, going from Genin to Chunin to Jonin. That typical shonen stuff, But it really picks up for me when he meets Inosuke and Zenitsu. Just the bond between those three, oh my gosh, I just loved those three's interaction. It's kind of like a buddy comedy in the way that they bounce off of each other. They're all just so very different from each other. Zenitsu kind of made me upset at first, but of course they build him up to be a little more badass than he actually begins as. He kind of starts off as this kind of like whiny guy, and you get more of his backstory and understand why he is that way. But just those boys, that's really the main reason that I love Demon Slayer so much. I also just really love Tanjiro as a main character. Normally, I don't like protagonists of shonen anime because they're pretty one-dimensional usually. They're the underdog, but they have a really pure heart, so they act really brashly because they want to do the right thing. And Tanjiro definitely has some of that in him, but he just feels like he has a little more depth than your average shonen protag. And then, of course, there's Nezuko. Nezuko is probably half the reason this show is so popular, honestly. She's just so dang cute, okay? She's probably one of the cutest anime girls of all time. She doesn't talk at all, she just makes the cute little grunts. And, when she's running around, when Zenitsu is chasing her and Tanjiro around the room. That's definitely one of the stick out scenes from Demon Slayer. Nezuko's just cute as a button, okay? So after I finished Demon Slayer, I took a hard left turn, a very sharp left turn into another really big series, but just big for different reasons, I guess, and that is Love Live. I know it's a huge show and a lot of people have seen it, but I just never thought it'd be something for me, you know? It's kind of girly, and I was just never into that type of thing. But let me tell you, I was pleasantly surprised at how much I enjoyed this show. It all started because I was playing Osu, or Os, or however you say it. It's a rhythm game for the PC, and I wanted something on my phone that I could play at work, like a rhythm game on my phone, and I saw the Love Live one, and I started playing it, and I was like, oh, these songs are kind of catchy, these girls are kind of cute, so I was like, I'll give Love Live anime a shot, why not? What do I got to lose? It's only 12 episodes, and I was just blown away by how much I enjoyed it. If you've never heard of Love Live before, it's about a group of girls that are trying to save their school from being shut down. And to do this, they start an idol group, or like a pop music group if you don't know what that is. And they do this to increase the popularity of their school and to get more people registering for it, so it won't go out of business. I know it sounds like a pretty straightforward premise, and like, how could you make an anime out of that? But they do a really good job. It starts from very humble beginnings. All of the girls aren't like friends at first, they're all from different friend groups, and they all come together, and it explores the different aspects you have to go through to become an idol. It's not like they're just like, snap, we're idols, we never practiced a day in our life, but here, we're ready. No, it goes through, you know, the physicality aspects, and, you know, learning to sing and dance together, and all the outfits, and just kind of coming together as a group. They do a really good job of exploring idol culture. I know if you're not really into idol culture, as you can see, I got the Twice poster in the back. I'm kind of into the K-pop idol groups already, so I had an interest in idol culture going into it. But I think even if you're not into like girly shows or idol shows at all, you would still enjoy this series. It's still very well made. Without spoiling anything here, I also really enjoyed how they kind of just destroy your expectations of how the show is going to end. Of course, I've only seen season 1, and I'm pretty sure I know how season 2 is going to end at this point, but you kind of have this idea in your head for all of season 1 on how it's going to end, and then the final 2 episodes is just like, nope, all of those things we had planned, nope, out the window for you. I just really liked how they threw a curveball, like I said, without spoiling anything. I thought it was a really predictable show at first, and then it really surprised me in the end, and I love being surprised. Another thing I was concerned with going into the show was how big the cast of characters was. I didn't think that they could really be fleshed out in 12 episodes. It's 9 girls, and it's hard to kind of explore each one's personalities, but they do a really good job. It's sort of an ensemble cast. Of course, there's the 3 main second years that we start with, and those girls kind of get a little more attention than the other ones, but I feel like I know all of the personalities of all the characters, even from just 12 episodes, and it really does make me excited to watch season 2 eventually to learn even more about them, because I like all of them. Maki and Umi are of course my favorites though. I'm a sucker for them tsunderes, okay? After I finished Love Live, I decided to take another hard left turn into a completely different genre, which I tend to do. I don't like watching the same genre over and over, or at least back to back. So the next one that I watched was SSSS.Gridman. That's 4 S's in there, which I've wanted to watch for a while now. It came out a couple years ago, and I've seen art of the characters a million times, and they always looked pretty cool. And so I decided to bite the bullet and watch it. It's only 12 episodes, so not a big commitment here. Now this is one of them mecha animes, which isn't one of my favorite genres in the world. I do love Code Geass. That's one of my favorites of all time. I have the Colin figure in the back if you can see her, but I more like that for the political and kind of like strategical aspects that brought to the table. I also liked Gurren Lagann growing up, but the mecha anime has never really been my thing, but I really enjoyed SSSS.Gridman for what it was. After doing some more research into it, Gridman is actually a character from a 90s TV show in Japan, and he's even kind of a reiteration of Ultraman, which I had heard of before. That he's kind of like the founding father of all of these big mecha guys. Now, after finding out about the Gridman thing, it does make a lot of sense, and it's super nostalgic if you watched any of those type of shows back in the day. I mean, I even like Power Rangers growing up and like the Voltron and Transformers cartoons, and there's some sequences in Gridman that are very reminiscent of those old 80s and 90s mecha shows. Just the sequences where they're coming together to make a bigger Gridman. It does have a very nostalgic vibe to it, and the music and the way that the sequences are directed. There's also the big kaiju fights, and those are really cool. I'm usually not the one to focus fully in on the action fights, but the kaiju battles are pretty cool, and there's a lot of different kaiju that Gridman has to fight, and all of the battle scenes are pretty epic. Besides all of the battle scenes, though, what really kept me hooked was the four main characters, Akane, Rika, and Yuta, and Utsumi, I think is the other boy's name. All the characters were designed very well. Of course, it's only 12 episodes, so they can't have that much development, but I loved all of them. Rika, in particular, to me, just felt very well written. She just felt like a real high school girl to me that I would have known back in high school. I think she just kind of has this flippant attitude at first towards everything and just kind of wants to fit in at school, but also wants to follow her heart. She just felt very real to me. I don't know what it was about Rika, but overall, I loved the main characters the most. That was my favorite part of Gridman. Now, this last one that I want to talk about is a seasonal anime. There's only 3 episodes out so far, so I have a very limited take on it, but there's just a lot of questions that I have about it. I think it's really interesting. This is the anime that I'm talking about in the title, so if you came to this video for that, here we go. Wonder Egg Priority is about a girl who obtains some magical powers and then uses them to defeat some demons. That's about as much as I can say without spoiling it. I feel like there's some good like aha moments in the first couple episodes, and I don't want to spoil those. If you've ever seen Madoka Magica before, it's similar to that, but much darker. It's got kind of a psychological horror feel to it. But it's similar in that she gets some supernatural powers. She has some friends that have supernatural powers, and they go out to defeat not witches, but kind of demons. I've seen it being called a psychological horror anime, and I think that's pretty true, particularly for the first episode. There's even like some jump scares in the first episode where I was like, it wasn't like super scary, but there are even some jump scares. But after the first episode, it's not so much horror as it is kind of like a psychological, dark themed type of thing. There even are some kind of like triggering themes such as suicide, depression, and bullying in this show. And it might be a little triggering. I know people are really sensitive now. But for me, I'm a former emo kid, so if it's got those depressing type of themes, I'm down. I'll watch it all day. And this has definitely got those for me. The one thing that I haven't figured out yet is that it sort of has some Yuri vibes, or like some girl love vibes. I've never watched a purely Yuri show before, so I'm not sure how deep that can go. I've seen some pretty deep yaois before, and I know how deep that can go. And this isn't deep into it yet, but it's kind of given me those vibes. Now, let me preface this by saying that I don't think it's a bad thing if this is a Yuri show. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. What I'm trying to do here is figure out if we can put Wonder Egg Priority in the Yuri genre to be like, this is a Yuri show if you want to watch a Yuri show. There's just a couple things that are kind of hinting towards that, but it's still kind of straddling this line here between just kind of a show that caters towards girls with all girl characters like Madoka Magica or Love Live, or a Yuri. I don't know. I just kind of want to explore whether it is one or the other. For one, this character does have only main characters that are girls, which is of course true of Love Live and Madoka Magica, but it just feels a little more romantic, or the relationships between these girls just feels a little more romantic, particularly the main character and her friend that she's trying to save. If you go back and watch it, in that first episode, it shows some flashbacks between the two, and there's particularly this one scene when they become friends. Her friend climbs into her bed and sort of like, is touching on her feet, and then they hug, and it's just it feels like a very romantic hug. It's not like any hug you'd see in Love Live or Madoka Magica. It just if you watch it, it just feels a little romantic. after that first episode, the main character starts to come out of her shell a little bit more. She starts as this shut-in, sort of neat type of character, and she's beginning to become a little bit more witty and confident in herself. And when she meets new characters, particularly new girls, she'll always comment on their body type. She'll be like, "Oh, your figure's kind of slamming. You're pretty voluptuous, aren't you?" I just find it kind of weird. It doesn't feel very platonic. It's like she's kind of like laying down some moves on these new girls that she meets. These are just a couple little hints that I found. I'm sure there's a few more. If anyone has any that I missed, please let me know down in the comments. But like I said, I'm not trying to say this is a bad thing, but I think it'll be really interesting to see how this show turns out. Like, is there actually going to be a truly romantic relationship between some of these girls? I think that could be cool if it happened. But overall, I really enjoy the show so far. Like I said, I like the psychological horror thing overall. And even if you're not into Yuri, I would definitely recommend watching Wonder Egg Priority. I'm really excited to see how it'll pan out for the rest of the season. Anyways, guys, that is the end of the video. That's all of the animes that I watched in January. If you made it this far, I really appreciate it. It feels like this video is forever. I haven't edited it yet, but it feels very long. So thank you for sticking around and watching. I will probably do a review of Wonder Egg Priority once it's out in its entirety, and I'm going to start watching some more seasonal animes too. I'll probably do more one-offs, and of course I will do a monthly kind of like roundup at the end of each month, or I'm going to try to do that because I think this was a good way to get my feelings about the shows that I watched out. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you'd like to see the next ones. Please give the video a like if you liked it, and just really appreciate you watching. This has been Max, and I will see you in the next one.